Blood Moon Eclipse 2025, uncover the dark truths, shocking spiritual secrets at 3 a.m. The night was thick with suspense, electric with potential disaster, as the ominous silence blanketed the town of Maplewood. Shadows hugged the corners of empty streets, curling around lampposts that flickered, casting a sickly orange hue. Under the blood-red moon, the air felt different, charged, like the world was holding its breath. Just hours ago, the news had filled screens, an eclipse forecasted at exactly 3 a.m. But this wasn't just any eclipse. Legends whispered of ancient rituals, dark forces unleashed, and secret destinies. As the clock's hands inched towards the witching hour, a chill crept through the town. Strange reports began to surface. A farmer claimed his animals had refused to enter the barn. A young girl found a shard of glass, but it was tea glass. It shimmered like a star fallen from the sky. The normally bustling diner stood eerily quiet, patrons exchanging worried glances, voices hushed, each spoon clattering against plates like a warning signal. "Did you hear about the stories?" someone murmured, their wide eyes flickering with fear. And then, things twisted further. Electronic devices began glitching, screens flashing images of haunting faces, their mouths moving silently. The faded whispers of a long-forgotten chant echoed through back alleys, like a distant memory trying to claw its way back into existence. It wasn't just the moon. It felt like the very fabric of reality was unraveling. Just as the tension reached a breaking point, a voice crackled through a radio, shaky and urgent. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect." Across the jittering townsfolk, a soft moan rose up, followed by a hushed gasp. People stepped outside, craning their necks towards the sky, their bodies frozen, hearts racing. The moon glowed brighter, casting an eerie light that illuminated the streets, revealing a procession of figures in dark cloaks, chanting in a tongue that felt older than time itself. Fear gripped their hearts, a tight ball in their chests. What were they about to witness? Who were these figures and what did the eclipse mean for them? As the clock struck 3 a.m., a deafening silence fell, heavier than before, and the true nightmare began. The town held its breath, as if the very earth were quaking beneath them. The cloaked figures stepped forward, shadows dancing in the moonlight, their chanting rising to a fever pitch. Each word dripped with an ancient power that sent icy chills down spines. The townsfolk stood paralyzed, mouths agape, entranced and terrified. Suddenly, a figure broke from the crowd. It was Mara, her face pale and determined, eyes darting to the menacing assembly. "We can't just watch," she shouted, her voice slicing through the thick tension. "This isn't a ritual, this is a summoning." But her cries, barely louder than whispers against the weight of dread, faded amidst the rising crescendo of the chanting. Just then, a blinding flash erupted from the moon, blaring like a siren. It illuminated the figures in a ghastly glow, their faces twisting into grotesque expressions, the whispers morphing into unearthly wails. Among them, Mara's heart dropped at the sight of a familiar face, Mrs. Henderson, the town's librarian, her eyes swirling with an unsettling dark mist. "Help me, Mara." Mrs. Henderson's voice cut through the chaos, desperate and pleading. But the stark transformation of her face, lips twisted in a mocking grin, made the situation all too clear. She wasn't the librarian anymore. Whatever had taken hold of her was something malevolent and ancient. Panic rippled through the onlookers as they stumbled back, bumping into one another, murmurs spiraling into screams. "What do we do?" a voice cried, trembling, as fear coursed through the crowd like wildfire. Mara pushed through the throng, determined to reach Mrs. Henderson before it was too late. "You're still in there." She reached out, but as her fingers brushed the woman's cloak, a surge of dark energy jolted through her, knocking Mara back. The world spun dizzyingly as she heard the roar of a long-lost spirit rising from the depths, a tangible anger crackling through the air. In that moment, Gage, the town's mechanic, sprang forward. "We've got to stop this. It's a blood moon ritual. We need a sacrifice to break the binding." He scanned the crowd, locking eyes with Mara. An unspoken understanding passed between them, they had to act fast. "What do you mean?" She gasped, shaken, unable to process the full implication of his words. "It's the only way." Gage shouted, desperation tinging his voice. "We need to confront them, face this madness together." But as he spoke, the ground beneath them trembled. A rumbling echoed from beneath the earth, followed by the sharp crack of thunder, despite the clear sky above. The townspeople reeled as fissures began to form, spewing forth shadows that seemed to writhe like serpents. Then suddenly, the chanting reached a fever pitch, and the cloaked figures turned simultaneously towards Mara and Gage. Their eyes flared, glowing like molten coals. A twisted smile crept over Mrs. Henderson's face, her voice now an otherworldly growl. "Your time is up." Time stood still as the tension snapped, leaving the group breathless. The air buzzed with electric anticipation, an adrenaline surge heavy with dread. Mara felt the weight of her reality shift, the fabric of her very existence frayed. As they prepared to brace for the unimaginable, a deep, booming voice echoed among them, a thunderous decree that promised chaos: "You cannot escape the blood moon's demand." And in that instant, Mara realized this was not an eclipse for the faint-hearted. It was a portal of darkness. "What is happening?" Gage shouted, but the answer stood behind them, a ragged shadow elongating and reaching toward them, trailing an ominous whisper, "Come closer." Their hearts raced. Would they succumb to the darkness, or find a way to break free? The clock continued its relentless tick, bearing witness to their dread, as the final moments before the true eclipse lay heavy in the air. What would they sacrifice to survive? With the world on the brink of disaster, Mara took a deep breath, a lump forming in her throat, understanding that the answer lay somewhere within them. The struggle was about to begin. But as the shadows advanced, would they hold the courage to confront their darkest fears? The ground shook violently, tossing people off their feet as the chanting grew in intensity, a discordant symphony of madness that reverberated in Mara's bones. She struggled to stand, her heart racing like a freight train. Gage was beside her, his eyes wide in terror, but determination flickered in their depths. Mara glimpsed the mass of shadows churning behind Mrs. Henderson. They swirled and hissed, as if alive, hungry for something or someone. "What do we do?" she screamed over the rising chaos. Gage lunged forward, his voice steady against the maelstrom. "We find the source. We need to disrupt the flow." As if in response, the cloaked figures raised their arms, unleashing a wave of darkness that wrapped around them. The grip was icy, like being submerged in a frigid lake. It pulled at Mara, trying to drag her into a bottomless void. Gage caught her hand in a fierce grip. "Stay with me." With sheer grit, they forced their way forward, wading through the frozen air thick with fear. Each step felt like a fight against an unseen force. Mara couldn't shake the feeling that they were running toward their own doom. "Look!" she shouted, pointing toward the center of the chanting figures. A pulsating orb glowed ominously, flickering like a dying star. It radiated a sickly green light, the source of the dark energy that bound the town in its clutches. "That's what we need to break," Gage said, determination sharpening his features. "If we can get close enough, maybe we can reverse it." But as they approached, the shadows writhed harder, twisting and lashing out like vipers. Mara felt a chill gnaw at her bones. The horror of the scene was almost suffocating. Desperate townsfolk, engulfed in panic, knocked over one another, unable to escape the mounting darkness. Suddenly, an agonizing scream erupted from the crowd. Mara's heart dropped as she spotted a man in the throng, wide-eyed and trembling, clutched in the shadow's embrace. "Help me!" He wailed, but his cry faded into strangled silence as he was silenced by the darkness. No! Mara shouted, but it was too much. The darkness was contagious, wrapping around her with icy fingers. She turned to Gage, her heart pounding, fear tearing through her. "We can't save everyone." He looked hard into her eyes, his voice low but fierce. "We have to try. It's about more than just us now. We can't let it take the town." Just then, Mrs. Henderson, distorted and terrifying, lunged forward, her voice a mixture of venom and sorrow. "You cannot fight what has already been claimed. The blood moon knows your sins." Mara's pulse quickened. Those words hung above them like an omen. "What do you mean?" she yelled, desperation creeping into her tone. "What have we done?" "The past has a way of revealing itself," Mrs. Henderson replied, her voice now chillingly calm. "The shadows began to withdraw, curtailing their grasp on the townsfolk while still keeping them disoriented. You cannot hide from your transgressions, little girl." With each word, the ground quaked again, and Mara's vision blurred. Images flooded her mind's secrets, lies, the hurt hidden deep within the town. A voice, familiar and striking, whispered in her ear, coaxing dread into her heart, "Do you want to know the truth? It always comes at a cost." In that instant, doubt twisted in her stomach. What truths lay beneath their feet? What had been buried all this time? Gage grabbed her arm, pulling her back as the cloaked figures regrouped, the pulsing orb gaining strength. "Mara, we can't give in. Focus on the orb." Heart pounding like a drum, Mara locked eyes with Gage, the fire of defiance stoked within her. Together, she breathed, her voice steadying. "We have to face whatever this is." But as they drew closer to the orb, the shadows returned with a vengeance, the chanting soaring to a deafening peak. The hooded figures advanced, shrouded in a darkness that threatened to consume them whole. Would they truly be strong enough to confront their past and pierce the heart of the evil surrounding them? Or would this blood moon demand more than they were willing to give? With a collective breath, they braced for the worst, and with a sudden thrust of desperation, Mara reached out, grasping the pulsating orb, determined to face whatever awaited within the darkness. The instant Mara's fingers made contact with the orb, an electric jolt shot through her body, igniting her senses in a terrifying surge. The darkness around her recoiled, its shadows swirling wildly as if in agony, giving her a fleeting breath of hope. She could feel it pulsing, the energy fluctuating in harmony with her heartbeat. "Keep holding on," Gage shouted, echoing her resolve. Mara tightened her grip, battling against the wave of cold that threatened to smother her. As she focused, fragmented images flashed before her, a tapestry woven with despair and longing, grief and betrayal, echoing the secrets of the town like a morbid lullaby. Faces of residents, too long ignored, danced through the darkness, each one tied to a forgotten sin. "Find the center." Gage's voice pierced through the growing chaos, urging her to focus. Suddenly, the orb erupted into a torrent of light, a beam shooting up toward the blood moon hanging ominously overhead. The chanting ceased abruptly, replaced by hushed gasps of disbelief. Mara was overwhelmed by an innate understanding and knowing of the hungers that drove the shadows. They craved acknowledgement, their desires steeped in the festering wounds of the town. "Your secrets cannot remain buried," echoed a voice in the air, familiar yet haunting. A figure emerged from the chaos, stepping from the veil of shadows. Ava, Mara's childhood friend, long believed to be lost. Her eyes glinted with pain, yet they burned with a knowledge that shocked Mara to her core. "Ava! How are you here?" Mara stammered, her heart a mix of hope and horror. "You need to listen, Mara. They want the truth to come out. It's the only way to break the hold they have on us," she urged, her voice a whispered flame igniting the spark of understanding. Mara felt an ache in her heart. The townsfolk's collective pain wasn't simply the shadows, they were the echoes of all that had been ignored. Ava pointed toward the orb, now swirling like a tempest. "It's tied to the blood moon, to all of us. We have to confront what we've buried, our guilt, our sins." Mara swallowed hard, fear battling with resolve. The shadows writhed, sensing hesitation, ready to pull her down. This was their chance, but the cost felt insurmountable. What if we fail? She asked, the doubt creeping back in, its fingers tightening around her throat. Gage's grip on her hand intensified. Then we fight together. The past is nothing if we don't face it. We can change it. With his words igniting a flame within her, Mara took a step forward and screamed, I want the truth. The words erupted from her as if breaking free from chains long worn. Instantly, a surge of energy burst from the orb, coursing through her veins. The woodland around them vibrated, shaking off the ominous frost that clung like death itself. The shadows recoiled, shrieking with rage, but still, Mara stood firm. Then the ground beneath them splintered, revealing dark chasms where the once buried secrets festered. From these cracks, voices began to echo, whispers of the lost, cries of the abandoned. Mara, help us, they called. Terror gripped her heart. She caught a glimpse of silhouettes fighting to reclaim their stories, lost in the battle between light and dark. But just as Mara felt the tide of shadows shift, a thunderous voice blasted from the orb, you will face consequences for unearthing the past. Mara gasped as the shadows coalesced, morphing into a monstrous figure, towering over them, a representation of all that was wrong, all that had been hidden. The townsfolk screamed in terror as the truth threatened to unleash horrors they weren't ready to face. Run! Gage shouted, but Mara felt rooted to the spot nonetheless. The flicker of determination ignited a fire in her. Not yet. She cried out defiantly, clenching her fists. We must fight. But even as the words left her mouth, Mara couldn't shake the chilling thought, could they truly confront the darkness that loomed before them? Or would the past consume them entirely? As the figure surged forward, shadows lunging eagerly in its wake, Mara realized this was only the beginning. The costs were mounting, and with it, the weight of the town's secrets pressed down upon them. Would they find the strength to stand against it? Or would the truth only serve to ensnare them deeper into the darkness? In the darkness that followed, the orb flickered dangerously, teetering on the brink of oblivion. A blast of wind swept through the clearing, howling like a tortured spirit. Shadows shrieked around them, retreating as the monstrous figure loomed closer, filling Mara's vision with a darkness she could feel clawing at her sanity. It moved like smoke and shadow, swirling into shapes that made her heart race with primal fear. Mara! Gage shouted, desperation etching lines of worry across his face. We can't hesitate. We stand together or fall apart. Mara glanced at him, his eyes bright with determination, grounding her amidst the chaos. Suddenly, the ground beneath her layered with dust and thick roots seemed to pulse, a living entity responding to her will. Together she breathed, barely a whisper. We'll face it together. Catching sight of the faces emerging from the fog, she recognized the townsfolk caught in their own grips of guilt, the ones who had carried their heavy secrets like anchors. The orb flared with light, illuminating their faces in a ghostly glow. Unlock your truths. Mara yelled. Face your demons. With every ounce of courage, she pulled energy from the bright tendrils linking her to the orb and sent it forth, aiming for the breathtaking darkness that towered over them. A howl erupted, primal and fierce, as a burst of light thrust from her fingertips. It shot forward, impacting the figure's chest with a thunderous crack. For a split second, the air shimmered, the shadows recoiling, revealing glimpses of memories frozen in time, moments of betrayal, love lost, and cries for help. The figure faltered, the swirling mass splitting into shards that formed macabre faces that held kindness and malice in equal measure. You dare challenge us? It roared, voice reverberating through the trees, rattling leaves and hearts alike. Mara's breath hitched, as fear spiraled into defiance. I dare to find the truth. She countered, raising her other hand, feeling the orb's energy flaring in her palms. The orb pulsed, furious and alive, urging her to uncover more hidden within those swirling memories. It was all connected, the anger, the sorrow, the shadows, they were manifestations of regrets left unspoken. She could feel it in her bones, the townsfolk had to relent, had to confess, to breathe out their truths into the world again. That a chorus of voices rose from the depths of the shadows, their pleas melding into a cacophony of pain. We've suffered forever, trapped in the lies we told. Help us break free. Desperation clutched at Mara's heart. Could they bring light where there had only been darkness for so long? The orb flickered once more, shaking under the weight of her resolve. She cast a searching gaze at the townsfolk. We can reclaim our stories. All of us. In the echo of their pleas, hope ignited, awakening resolve in others. Gage, eyes fierce, stepped forward. They've kept us in chains. Now it's time to shatter them. He lifted his voice, calling to the gathered crowd, their eyes reflecting the past they had long ignored. Stand with us. Spurred by a collective determination, sparks of defiance erupted from the townsfolk, igniting the air with a defiant flame. The monster recoiled under the force of their voices, the shadows ripping at its form as they broke away, setting past pain free. But just when victory seemed within reach, the figure roared louder, its shadowy mass twisting wildly. Foolish mortals! You think you can erase me? I am the darkness of your past. Before she could respond, the ground beneath Mara buckled again, opening a deep chasm dark, swirling, the essence of fear waiting to consume them all. Her heart raced, panic clawing its way up her throat. No! We can't let the past drag us down. Gage reached for her, a lifeline in this chaos. We have to confront it together, Mara. As darkness threatened to swallow her, an overwhelming thought surged within her, a terrifying notion that in this moment, they stood on the brink of everything. The town's history could either rise again, reborn in truth, or be obliterated entirely by lies. Would they find the courage to face the truths buried deep within? Or would they tumble into the abyss, lost forever to the shadows that demanded to be known? And in that breathless moment, Mara felt the orb expand, its energy surging, ready to unleash all that had been tucked away, what lay waiting for them on the other side. The abyss yawned between them, a void that pulsed with darkness and despair as if the past itself had risen to swallow them whole. Mara's heart thudded painfully against her ribcage while the chasm's cold breath seeped into her bones. Whispers of dread swirled in her ears, mingling with the chilling roar of the monstrous figure. Mara! Gage called out, his voice breaking through the chaos. If we fall, we take this darkness with us. We can't let it win. With fire igniting in her gut, she drew on the orb's power, pushing back against the paralyzing fear clawing at her mind. We're not falling. She screamed, determined and loud. We're rising. The orb flared, shimmering brighter than before, a beacon of blinding light amid the encroaching darkness. Strength swelled in her limbs, and a rush of energy blasted from her fingertips, sending a wave of light rippling across the clearing. The townsfolk, witnessing the radiant display, began to chant in unison, their voices harmonizing with Mara's conviction. Unlock the truth. Set us free. They cried, emboldened by the hope blooming within their chests. The shadowy creature hissed, a surge of anger pouring from its gaping maw. Its forms twisted and writhed, the shards of faces morphing into grotesque caricatures, taunting the very essence of regret that tethered the townsfolk to their pasts. The body of swirling darkness lurched forward, crashing into their collective resolve like a tempest. Suddenly, one figure broke away from the crowd, stepping forward with trembling hands. It was Mrs. Adams, her frail frame shaking as she spoke. I kept secrets for too long. My son, he the moment hung, charged with urgency. Mara's heart raced. Tell us, Mrs. Adams. You're stronger than the past that binds you. I hid it because I was ashamed, she wailed, her voice cracking. The car accident. It was my fault. I didn't stop when I should have. I lost everything. Tears streamed down her face, igniting a ripple of shock through the crowd. The shadow recoiled at the force of her confession, the darkness shimmering and constricting around his form, a villain in the throes of defeat. Mara seized the moment, calling out, yes. Let it out. We're with you. One by one, memories rose, breaking free from the chains of guilt. A young man stepped forward next, fists clenched. I cheated my father. I took his dreams and crushed them. His voice echoed, trembling yet fierce, the air heavy with raw pain, awakening something deep within the townsfolk. As the confessions piled up, the shadows twisted more fiercely, desperate to cling to their power. Mara could feel the orb vibrating beneath her touch, pleading for more. Keep going. Don't stop. The crowd erupted with tales of fear, loss, and heartbreak, each confession sending shockwaves that rippled through the darkness, causing it to flicker and wane. Gage stood beside Mara, holding her hand tightly, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and terror. You're leading us, Mara. Keep pushing. But before another confession could slip into the light, the monstrous figure roared with rage, drowning out any hope. You think these truths can free you? Each confession only binds you closer to me. A thick silence fell, punctuated by the aftermath of his words, as the townsfolk faltered. The shadows surged, looming over them like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury. Mara's heart sank. No. We won't give up now. Yet a disquieting thought clawed at the edges of her mind. Was this darkness stronger than they ever realized? As another wave of shadows poured forth, Mara felt an insistent pull from the orb, beckoning her to confront the depths of the chasm. Did the answer they needed lie beyond the veil of this reality? With her pulse quickening and the danger escalating, a wild resolve surged within her. Let us do this. Together. She yelled, then suddenly leaped toward the growing abyss, ready to embrace whatever truths lay ahead. Would she uncover the light that could save them all, or would she plunge into an inescapable darkness? The moment Mara jumped, time seemed to stretch and twist, the world around her dissolving into a whirlwind of colors and sensations. The orb blazed in her grasp, its light fiercely pushing back against the dark whirlpool, threatening to engulf her. A stomach-churning sensation gripped her, a plunge into uncertainty that felt almost liberating. As she descended, she glanced back. Gage and the townsfolk were mere shadows above, flickering like distant stars. Her heart raced as the whispers of those confessions echoed in her mind. Unlock the truth. Set us free. They were their truths, but what about her own? Did she have a confession buried beneath the weight of her fears? The darkness wrapped around her as if trying to pull her down. The shadows coiled tighter, drawing out twisted memories, painful echoes of regret. Faces flashed before her in the depths of the void, each one a fragment of her life she had kept hidden. Her childhood, moments of betrayal, and the times she failed to stand up for what she believed in. The abyss was a mirror, reflecting deeply her turmoil and insecurities. Suddenly, she landed hard on a ground that felt both solid and soft, like being trapped in a dense fog. The orb flickered, and the darkness responded, swirling violently, trying to separate her from the light. She felt the heat of anger rising within her. No! She shouted, gripping the orb tighter. It pulsed in agreement, as if it recognized her defiance. Then, the shadows hesitated, caught off guard. For a brief, suspended moment, the churning darkness slowed. Mara took a breath, gathering herself. This was a battle waged within, one she had to win. The swirling shadows were not just entities they faced externally, they were manifestations of her fears and failures trying to chain her down. Determined to push through, she closed her eyes, whispering to the darkness, I see you. You don't own me. The orb reacted, illuminating the shadowy landscape with radiant light, stressing the suffocating grip of despair bound to her identity. Around her, a landscape of twisted memories shifted and morphed. Mara watched as scenes played out. Each regret, each fear, became raw and palpable. The air thickened with the stench of resentment and loss, making it hard to breathe. She staggered under their weight. But the orb didn't waver. Strength surged through her. She was more than her past. She could rewrite her narrative. Each confession she could bear was an ember sparking against the blue flame of redemption. I confess, she cried out, her voice echoing through the void. I was afraid of losing myself. Afraid of being vulnerable. The shadows hissed, trying to drown her voice, but she pressed on. I hid because I feared judgment. I lost friendships through my silence. I know pain and I refuse to let it control me anymore. With every word, more light burst from the orb, piercing through the suffocating gloom, and then, unfamiliar voices joined hers, familiar yet frightening. They were the townsfolk, their echoes of truth woven together with hers, a powerful tide crashing against the darkness. Together, we are stronger, they chanted, their voices rising, drowning out the shrieks of despair of the shadow. The shadows writhed, trying to pull back, but the light only intensified. Mara felt the orb pulsing with renewed energy, the warmth of every shared confession igniting a blaze that threatened to cleanse the darkness. But then, amidst the rising brightness, a figure began to take shape in the swirling shadows. A face emerged with an eerie familiarity, a mix of rage and sorrow. You think this can save you? The creature roared. Your truths are chains, not wings. I am the reflection of what you fear to confront. Mara's heart plummeted as realization struck. The shadow wasn't just an enemy, it was a part of her. The fear, the shame, the guilt, it had all taken corporeal form and was staring straight back at her. Could she confront this embodiment of her hidden self? Or would the darkness swallow her whole once more, claiming her in its eternal embrace? Mara stood frozen, the orb's light flickering dangerously, as the shadow prepared to charge. The shadow surged forward, its darkness consuming the flickering light, hunger etched on its distorted face. Mara stumbled back, but the familiar echo of the townsfolk's voices rang in her ears. Together, we are stronger. That thought ignited a fire in her chest. She wasn't alone. As the shadow reared up, Mara planted her feet. You don't scare me anymore. She challenged, her voice steady. Her heart thundered in her ears, but she pushed through the fear. The orb pulsed, and waves of light broke against the swirling tendrils. The darkness shrieked, recoiling as if burned. In that moment, Mara realized the shadows thrived on her silence and fear. She had the power to strip them of their strength. With every deep breath, she gathered her memories, the storms of shame and doubt, and unleashed her voice. I felt unworthy. I felt like a failure. Each confession tore through the air, growing stronger. The shadow faltered, a flicker of uncertainty passing across its monstrous face. Deep shadows darted behind it, as if even they were afraid to forge ahead. With urgency bursting in her chest, Mara shouted, You are not me. You're just a mirage built from lies. The orb surged, blindingly bright, flaring with the energy of every truth she uttered. The whispers of the townsfolk grew louder, harmonizing with her bravery, creating a cosmic choir against the chaos. No more hiding. No more running. With each assertion, she felt the weight of her burdens begin to lift, as if she was shedding layers of heavy armor she had unknowingly donned for years. They piled on her, one painful memory for each confession. But the shadow surged back, angry, desperate to claw at her newfound courage. You think you can escape? It hissed, voice slithering around Mara like a snake. This world is shaped by shadows. You are part of me. Mara shook her head, emboldened. And yet, I refuse to be consumed by you. The light of the orb blazed ahead, illuminating the twisted landscape with a fierce brilliance, painting the shadows in colors they couldn't bear to touch. Then, the figure hesitated, its form flickering, instability causing cracks to run through it as if it were a fragile painting of smoke. Mara seized the moment. You're nothing but fragments of my fear. Suddenly, a wave of realization struck her. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. I forgive myself. She shouted, louder than before. I forgive myself for being human. For being afraid. Those words echoed through the air, a battle cry against the creeping darkness. The orb reacted like a tidal wave, an explosion of bright energy rippling outward. The shadows shrieked, shriveling back at the intensity of her honesty, fear finally breaking under the weight of acceptance, but just as she felt triumph surge through her veins, a powerful wind swept through the void, knocking her onto the ground. Mara gasped, struggling to stand. A massive figure erupted from the shadows, casting a dreadful silhouette against her light. "I am what you fear most," it cried, its voice a tremor of thunder, merging with the rage of all her suppressed emotions, every judgment she ever faced, every moment of rejection. "You cannot defeat me, you need me." Mara's heart raced, fear wrapping its fingers around her throat. Could she really confront this other part of herself? Or was she still too torn between light and dark? The orb flickered uncertainly as the creature pressed forward, drawing closer, every step a deep echo of her own insecurities that threatened to drown her once more. As she prepared to rise, the rim of black and blinding white began to blur. "Remember, Mara," the shadow sneered, sinuous and vile, "some truths are better left buried." And just when she was about to respond, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble, splitting open in a shocking crack, and darkness surged, rushing toward her like waves of a harrowing tide. The darkness spilled forth, a black tsunami engulfing Mara. She felt its icy fingers close around her ankles, pulling her down into the depths of despair. Panic clawed at her throat as she gasped for breath, the air thick with dread. The orb's light pulsed weakly, a flickering candle fighting against a storm. "Stand your ground." She heard a distant voice shout, one of the townsfolk chanting from somewhere beyond the void. It pierced through her fear, a reminder that she was not alone. The thought filled her with fleeting warmth, a spark in the frozen gloom. Mara closed her eyes, clutching the orb tightly against her chest. "You are not me." The word struck the air with fierce determination. With newfound strength, she willed the light to surge, to push back against the dark tides encroaching on her. The shadow monster let out a howl filled with agonized rage. "You'll regret this, Mara. You cannot live without me." Its voice resonated through her, a chilling reminder of all the moments spent in its suffocating embrace. Mara gritted her teeth, she felt a swell of defiance rise within her. "I'm done living in your shadow," she screamed, and with that, she unleashed the orb's power. Light burst forth, illuminating every crevice of the darkness. The shadows recoiled violently, shrieking as their monstrous forms began to waver and dissolve beneath the brilliant onslaught. But just as victory seemed within reach, she felt a tremor beneath her feet. The ground cracked further, splitting reality in two. She could see an abyss form amidst the chaos, an endless void welcoming the shadows like lost children. Suddenly, tendrils of dark energy snaked toward her from the fissure, pulling at her with unnatural force. "You can't escape who you are," the shadow hissed, its voice a package of bittersweet resentment laced with temptation. "Your failures will find you. You will never be free." The orb dimmed under the weight of doubt. Mara could feel the pull of the chasm, a seductive whisper promising safety in surrender. Her breath quickened as memories flooded her mind. She could almost see their faces, the disapproving glances, and the voices questioning her worth. "No." She gasped, fighting against the tug of despair. She took a deep breath, the taste of courage filling her lungs. "Every part of me deserves to be whole." With those words, she pushed forward. The orb blazed again, a starburst of hope surging within her. Light exploded outward, sending waves of warmth crashing into the shadows. Mara remained steady, reminding herself with each pulse of energy that only through acceptance could she confront the darkness demanding to claim her. But the shadows, wild and hurt, began to coalesce into a massive form, a towering embodiment of her deepest fears. It loomed over her, eyes like burning coals, mocking her resolve. "You think you can banish me?" it laughed. "I will grip your heart until your last breath." Mara trembled but refused to back down. "You're wrong. You thrive only in my weakness. You're just fragments of my pain." She screamed as her resolve intensified, sending ripples of light further into the darkness. The shadow entity paused, confusion flickering across its jagged features. Was this the moment it would falter? Just as she began to feel the tides turn, an ear-splitting roar shook the ground, a sound that reverberated deep within her soul. It was chaos and ferocity. It ripped through the air, and in that instant, Mara was thrown back. She lost her grip on the orb, watching helplessly as it tumbled away, flickering dimly, From the depths of that chaos, the void began to churn, and with it came a realization that clawed its way into her mind. Something far worse than the darkness itself was rising from the depths, a new, unspeakable terror that brought new questions. Because what if the shadows weren't the real enemy? What if they were just manifestations of an even greater darkness waiting to consume her entirely? Nothing was certain now, and she felt as if she were standing on the edge of something monumental. The ground shook violently. The shadows roared louder, their echoes blending with Mara's racing heart, drowning her in uncertainty. As the blaring sounds of chaos enveloped her, one thing hung in the air like a blade ready to drop. Would she be brave enough to confront the truth of her darkness? Or would it envelop her whole? The abyss gaped wide before her, an invitation steeped in dread and desperation. Just when it seemed the shadows would consume her, a quiet voice surfaced, one that felt deeply familiar, one of her childhood friends, Ava. "Mara, listen. You have the strength to overcome this." As if ignited by her words, the flickering orb regained some of its brilliant glow. Mara's heart pulsed with a fierce determination, lighting a deeper fire in her soul. Her surroundings shuddered violently, but she stood her ground, fixing her gaze upon the wretched figure that had come to signify her fears. "No more running," she declared, her voice breaking through the chaotic noise, stronger and steadier than before. "You don't get to control me." The shadow sneered, its jagged features twisting in anger. "You think mere words can erase me? I am your past, alive and breathing." Mara felt the swell of memories burst within her, flashes of laughter and tears intertwined, moments of weakness and strength, betrayal and healing. Each recollection carved deep grooves in her heart, shaping her person. "I embrace my past," she shouted, lifting her chin defiantly. "I accept every mistake, every truth I have hidden. They don't define me, they've made me stronger." The orb pulsed, channeling her fierce resolve. Light erupted from her, enveloping the shadow in its spiraling warmth. The creature recoiled, shrieks of rage filling the air. "No. You cannot take back what I control." "Yes. I can, and I will." Mara continued, her voice steady and sure, mingling with the energy of the orb. It danced around her, empowering her as if saying it believed in her too. "You are nothing but a reflection of what I've feared. You've haunted me long enough. It's time for me to reclaim my story." In that moment of clarity, all of Maplewood began to awaken. The townsfolk, positioned on the edges of the chaos, saw Mara leading the charge against their collective darkness. With newfound courage, one by one, they stepped forward, each facing their own shadows. Colby, the owner of the local hardware store, stepped up. "I've let my anger consume me for years, I lost friends because of it. I forgot who I was," shouted Ms. Daniels, the retired schoolteacher whose kind demeanor had hidden layers of pain. "I let my silence take away my strength." Even Gage raised his voice, joined beside Mara. "I was afraid to pursue my dreams. We're ready to admit it all." With each confession, the orb blazed brighter, each flickering pulse pushing back the tide of shadows. Mara felt her heart soar. They weren't fighting alone, their truths were powerful, alive in the atmosphere. The monstrous figure faltered, shadows splintering as its grotesque form began to dissolve. "No. You have no rights to do this," it bellowed, gripping onto its last vestiges of power whilst swirling chaos threatened to engulf it. "Together, we are stronger." Mara rallied the townsfolk, her voice ringing through the resonance of growing faith. "Together," they replied, their voices synchronizing in a symphony of acceptance. Lifting the veil of the past, the orb erupted with a sparkling brilliance, a radiant corona exploding outward, washing away the darkness like an incoming tide. Mara felt the warmth of the light burning through. The last vestige of fear coiled tightly around her heart. With one last effusion of strength, she cried, "Release us from our burdens." An echoing roar erupted, one filled with anguish, as the figure disintegrated into a shimmering mist, scattered by the growing light. The whispers that had seeped from within surged like a tidal wave, leaving behind tender memories, some bitter, yet all true. The obliteration of shadows sent waves of relief cascading over the townsfolk, smiles dawning in the wake of trauma washed clean. Mara Gage breathed, stepping forward as the chaos subsided. She took his hand, grounded in the stillness that followed a storm. The blood moon hung brightly above them, now serene against the clear night sky. What once felt like terror, now radiated a soft glow, a reminder of rebirth and hope. Tears filled Mara's eyes. We did it. Together, we faced our darkness. And we can keep facing it anytime it tries to return, Gage replied gently, holding her gaze. Mara turned, looking at her neighbors who were now friends, all standing united beneath the blood moon, a testimony of resilience and truth. Their shadows no longer ruled them, they had reclaimed their power. Taking a shuddering breath, Mara savored the moment, knowing their journey was only just beginning. Let us embrace our stories, she said, her voice steadying. Let us share them and heal together. As the townsfolk nodded, renewed warmth surrounded them, together painting a future far brighter than the darkness they had faced. This was their farewell, but far from the end. It was a new beginning, and they were ready to step into the light. Now, take a moment to join this journey. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will sweep you off your feet. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and spread this epic tale. If this resonated with you, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support matters, it shapes our community. Let us grow together.